I'm going to do it again. Take 3. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the official Little Dicey podcast. My name is Salvatore. I am the Dungeon Master here at A Little Dicey. This is Matt. He's our profound player, and he will be the co-host for this podcast along with me from here until the day that either both of us go simultaneously or one of us goes before the other.
I'm glad that we recognize the fleeting nature of life every time we kick off a stream.
I certainly have to.
It's important.
Yeah, especially because when I eventually pretend kill one of you guys, at least we started off saying that we literally will die eventually, so it minimizes the, loss.
That's called foreshadowing.
That's foreshadowing, everybody.
It's important.
Speaking of, if you are not familiar with our live-streamed home game, Matt and myself play Dungeons & Dragons every Wednesday evening from 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to just about 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do it live. Every once in a while when we don't have a player in, we pre-record and we play that out, but we're always live in the chat and everything like that. So do please check that out here on the same channel. If you are just listening to this, which that's going to be available soon. I'm not sure if I'm going to include of course I should include the pilot episode. So technically this is episode 1, right? Because pilots are their own thing, I guess. I don't know how fucking television works.
We'll redo the pilot with better actors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then that, it'll be perfect. We'll fire Damon Wayans Jr.
That's the exact reference I was going to make.
I knew you were. So good. Holy
and then
shit.
We'll bring us back in season 5 or whatever.
Yeah, when the show actually takes off and then he wants to actually be back in it. Yeah, it'll be fine. This is either the first or the second episode. Yeah, we play a home game of Dungeons & Dragons. That's where a lot of our specific references will likely be derived from. But this podcast is generally just about the game of D&D. It's my favorite game, and we've been playing it together for the better part of nearly 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And we just started a new campaign. By the time that this comes out, we will have played our 4th session. Which is very exciting. We're going to be doing that tomorrow, and I cannot wait to be back playing it live in front of people again.
Feels like a long time for some reason.
No, because it has. It's been, usually we only wait about a week in between, but because we had to pre-record, we did 2 sessions within a week, but then we sort of took a week and a half to 2 weeks off, which is a long time, in my opinion. It feels like a long time.
It does feel like a long time.
Yes. But we're jumping back into it tomorrow. So for you all, it would have been yesterday, I believe, because I'll be putting these out on Thursday the following. So that being said, we have a very interesting thing that we're planning on doing today. And it's going to basically just be completely just like from the hip, really. I just sort of sat down with Matt while we were doing the sound checking and everything like that, and I was basically like, all right, so we're just going to build a character today. And Matt was like, okay, cool, great. I think it's a great idea. I think it's probably the thing that I do the most outside of preparing for the sessions as a dungeon master. I just sort of make characters. I feel like a lot of people who either really want to play Dungeons & Dragons and don't have a group, or watching shows like ours or Crit Roll or D20 or anything like that, I feel like people really love creating characters. I do it all the fucking time. I always have them in my head, and because I'm a dungeon master, I get to sort of showcase some of them in the game as NPCs. But as a player, you really only get to play you play one character at a time generally, right? And so, this will be a fun exercise, and for anybody watching or listening, you get to get sort of an inside idea of what goes through a dungeon master's mind, so that side of the coin for me. And, if you're just sort of trepidatious about making a character or something, or maybe you've played a few times and you're like, I don't really know what I'm looking for when making a character, or maybe your dungeon master is like, hey, I would prefer if you maybe came up with a little bit more about this person that you're making or whatever. This will give you an idea because, this will give you a really good idea of like what goes into it for two people who like really think about this kind of stuff. I know you can speak on this, Matt, but like for me personally, I really try to layer a lot of my NPCs that I know are going to be featured throughout the game, that you guys will likely interact with a lot. I really like to layer them with like legitimately things like what do they desire, like to what limits will they go to attain what they desire. Um, what do they really care about? Like I even go as far as to like, okay, well, who are their family members? Are they alive? Like, would we possibly meet them even if we don't? Like, how do they feel
Right.
about them? How does that influence, blah blah blah, whatever. And I know you think about these things a lot too, to the point where your current character, Kill, you are thinking even more about not just them as a person, like as who he is as a turtle. You're thinking about the culture of his people in general,
Right.
right? And that's a huge thing to inform how. I mean, I know people don't like to use the word should or whatever about this game, but like legitimately, I think that if you're, I don't know, if you ignore like stuff like that, it's like, well, play the game how you'd like, have fun. If you're having fun, that's great. If everyone at the table is comfortable and having fun, that's the point of the game. But if you want to get more out of the game, in my opinion, think about these things because that's really going to really enhance and sort of enlighten your experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, like, to say a couple things. First of all, like, I think everybody has made a character in their head outside of the context of D&D
Of course.
in their life, right? I mean,
Mhm.
these are like the building blocks of imagination. You know, when you're a kid and you're playing with, whether it's action figures or your dollhouse or, making up an imaginary friend or whatever. I
Right.
mean, that is what you're doing. Those army men or dolls or
Yep.
imaginary friends, they don't have personalities until you give them one.
Exactly.
And, um, when you're serving tea to your stuffed bear and you're deciding whether they want one lump or two, that's
Right.
character design,
Oh,
right?
100%.
And so like if anyone's like, "Oh, I don't know how to like make a character," I would just say like bullshit. Like
Oh, you totally do.
totally done it. And if nothing else, like you have we all as we grow, like that's to speak on like imagination, but then like as we grow up, I think we probably all tend to think about kind of what makes us tick and what our strengths and weaknesses are. And, if you've had a job interview, you've had to think about these questions.
Yep.
And, like, in a way, these are the building blocks of character design. These are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. And, the nice thing is that maybe not always as well as I'd like, but in general, there are ways to translate those characteristics into mechanics.
Yes.
And so I think today we're probably going to be talking about both
100%.
characterization in terms of just, what I might call like flavor or like top-down design.
Yep.
But also mechanics and
Yes.
how they kind of go back and forth.
And a huge thing about the sort of relationship between flavor and mechanics is that I truly believe that, again, I'm going to be using should here, but I truly believe that they should serve each other. Because when you come down to it, the bottom line is this is a game.
Mhm.
And if you're playing a game and you completely ignore the mechanics or the rules, it's like they're there to add structure and to enhance your experience, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, and it's fine to like just tell stories. I mean, like we're actors and performers. Like I do that when I'm working. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I love to do that. That is my great pleasure in life is to perform in that sense. But there aren't really. I mean, there are like a few like unspoken like rules or whatever when it comes to performing on stage and whatnot. But I mean, like there's no. Well, you only have two actions when you're on stage, so you have to, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like, but when it comes to that, you have an opportunity to take the skeleton that you're given, aka the mechanics of how to play D&D, and then use that to inform your character and vice versa. You can use your character to inform the choices that you make through the mechanics that you're given, right? And if you just ignore both of those things, then it's like, well, you're missing an opportunity to create something really special through the parameters of this game.
Yeah.
And you are extremely good at that when it comes to sort of like, okay, well, I have these mechanics. I'm playing this class, and I'm playing a character of this race, and they have this culture, and he's interested in this thing. Well, if he's interested in this thing and their culture does this, XYZ, then mechanically ABC matches up well with that. I want to go with that. And also, because of this, I can do like a few tweaking here where I don't feel like I'm just not doing anything in the game when it comes to combat or like choices or whatever. I have the ability to be like, okay, I like mushrooms and whatnot, not to like reference Kill,
Yeah.
but he's a druid of spores, which is perfect to inform his character if he likes, foraging for these different like fauna or flora and whatnot, specifically mushrooms. And it's just a great synthesis of the flavor and the mechanic.
Yeah, and I think it's very satisfying in the end to not have. I think you want to avoid dissonance between the story that you've created for your character and the mechanics you've created for
Yes.
your character in the game.
Yep.
Not out of any like sense of like, to me, not even out of any sense of like following the rules, but just because it's more fun.
Oh yeah.
If you say like, oh, I want my character to be to make like an extreme example, if you're like, I want my character to be kind of like a Sherlock Holmes type, like they catch everything, nothing kind of goes unnoticed, they're brilliant at deducing clues, but then for whatever reason you're like, but I don't know if that'll be good in combat, so I'm going to make them like super strong with a greatsword. Like then when you're playing your character, you just I think it will catch up with you. I think you'll be like, yeah, I mean I'm good at combat, but it doesn't feel like the character that I wanted to play.
Right.
And you can really start either way. You can say, I want to be Sherlock Holmes, or you can say, I want to be the character with the dope greatsword that is just like cleaving enemies in battle. And either way, as long as you kind of go to the other side and make it as cohesive as possible, I think it'll be a satisfying experience.
Certainly. And then lastly, before we like actually jump into doing a few things in the process of creating a character, I always advocate for, if it's your first time creating a character or whatever, or maybe it's your first time stepping out of the box. We talked about this in the pilot or the first episode, where a lot of times first-time players or returning players after a long hiatus have a tendency to, and this is fine, I think it's totally fine, but they have a tendency to make a character and then just sort of play themselves. And that works, right? I think a really great example of that is just straight up like all of the greatest professional wrestlers that have ever been professional wrestlers are just themselves, but they're like the most heightened version of themselves. Right. Yeah. I mean, the fucking Rock is literally just Dwayne Johnson, but like he just goes out there, he's got his sunglasses, he raises his eyebrow, and he calls you a pussy or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then Stone Cold Steve Austin is literally just a redneck who likes beer and stomps people's faces in, and like that's it. And
what's funny too is like, not to turn this into a wrestling podcast, but
we can do that too.
Obviously we both have a background in wrestling. You more recent, me more decade ago or whatever.
Not to interrupt you, but I have to get you to I'm gonna get you to watch AEW with me, like a special together, because you'll be like, I might be back in it because it's so good.
I mean, it's basically theater plus plus sports. Yeah.
It's great.
But like if you look at a guy like the Undertaker, who started with a shtick, obviously being in sort of vaguely undead, demon man kind of is not really who. I forget his real name, but it's not really who he is.
Mark Calloway.
Okay, yeah. But in his later years, he became, the sort of like Harley riding kind of,
biker taker.
Yeah. Which to me, as a fan, when I saw it, and I think this was really post my big fandom, but when I saw it, I was like, ooh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because it kind of broke the lore.
Changed
that had been
too
established.
much. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he had now had the clout to basically call his own shots, and he's like, now I'm going to be me.
Yeah, 100%.
And for him, that's probably incredibly satisfying.
Oh, certainly.
And so, maybe that's part of the message too, is it's okay to play what you think will be satisfying and not just what you think will be like super cool
effective
or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, that's a perfect segue into like, I advocate for going for the Undertaker character. Like, Biker Taker works. Like, if you want to, like, I personally, like, I like to believe that I am a, more on the line of, like, a righteous person and stuff like that. So, like, if I'm, like, making a character and I'm like, all right, well, I just kind of just want to react to the game the way I would probably react or whatever. I'm going to play this, neutral good paladin or whatever that like I have a creed that I follow, but like I'm not like we have to follow what the king's things that you know what I mean, blah blah blah, whatever. So which is fine, but I really advocate like if you really want to have a really fun experience, in my opinion, step out of the box and be like, I'm gonna play a pseudo undead person who takes care of corpses and whatnot, and also fights people because his brother burned down his house and killed his family. I think what it was. I can't remember the original story of the Undertaker. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, all that being said, I think we could jump into character building now that we sort of prefaced of you know what we like to look for in these things.
And I will also say one last thing is just in general, you know, these are kind of our tactics for building a character. I think a lot of this does apply to any game.
Yeah.
Some of it probably not so much. I mean, if D&D historically started as a war game.
Yeah.
And if your circle is the type that plays it like classic D&D, where you're going into a dungeon, there's an 85% chance your dude's going to die in like 20 minutes, and you might play 3 or 4 characters in a night, totally okay to just be like grizzled veteran guy.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? But that being said, you could still do all these things, right? And look for ways to show that personality. But so there really is more than one way to play the game. But I think if you're playing a long-running narrative-based game, following some of the kind of the tips or whatever that we're going to talk about is going to lead to the most satisfying, results.
To sort of reiterate or just blatantly repeat what you said before in our last episode, if you are playing this game in the way that sort of we like to play it, in the sense of, and I quote, reading a book that is written in real time, end quote, I think that these sort of ideas and like patterns that we like to sort of use in creating a character will help enhance your time playing the game.
For sure.
So right now, I basically just have my laptop out. The coolest thing about fucking playing D&D in 2021, or pretty soon 2022, is that really if you have an internet connection, you just can totally, for free, make a character, like, for the most part, and it's like, you don't have to do anything but pull up a website. I mean, we're going to be using D&D Beyond. That's usually the premier way for people to make characters. For us playing the game, if you just sort of open up D&D Beyond right now and you make an account and it's just fresh, you can access each one of the basic classes and basic races that are found in the basic rules of D&D. You would have to go forth and like actually purchase the player's handbook and the dungeon master, or no, actually just if you wanted to make characters, just purchase the player's handbook on the website, and then that unlocks the rest of like the subclasses for whatever class. And then if you really wanted to expand after that, there are other supplemental books or whatever that you would have to purchase. Because of the nature of our game and, you know, of how much I want you guys to have access to, I have basically everything unlocked in D&D Beyond. So if we start referencing things and you're like, wait, I'm making a rogue and all I can do is the assassination subclass, that is because you'd have to go forth and purchase certain things. If you don't have the player's handbook, you don't necessarily need it. You don't need anything, really. You just need your imagination and a set of dice.
Listen, a lot of this comes down to like your own sort of go-getterness.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, it's really not... Everything can be easily found through Google search.
Easily,
I mean,
100%.
We don't work for Wizards. We don't work for D&D Beyond.
Yeah, no.
You can play this game completely free.
Yeah, easily.
The best thing that D&D Beyond does for you specifically is when you're playing in a game with the Dungeon Master in a group, it just gives access for like the DM can go in and like put items directly on your sheet. They can, you know, you can add feats or whatever, but like, and the one of the nicer things about D&D Beyond is it does all the calculations for you. Of course, you don't have to figure out your spell save DC and all this nonsense that can be really annoying. But if you don't want to pay for this game, you know, don't let it discourage you. You can totally play this game for free.
Easily.
That
being said, spent a lot of money for this, so we're gonna use this. Okay, so we're gonna I'm just gonna walk through it like I guess normal. So if you open up the character creation menu in D&D Beyond, you would see standard, quick build, and randomize. We're not gonna fuck with randomize. I honestly, I mean,
That
you
seems
could.
insane to me.
Yeah, that's insane to me as well. You could do that if you want. I'm not even going to touch that.
Yeah.
Quick build is basically just create a first level character using recommended starting options. If you are entirely new to the game, to get an understanding of what is involved in a character sheet, I highly recommend just hitting quick build and then just like looking at what it gives you. That's great.
And these are going to be kind of your classic tropes, right?
Yeah, it's generally going to be like, like it's a halfling rogue or something like that, or whatever. Just like an optimal class and race combo, and then like it'll give you half decent optimal stats.
And that's why a lot of people get into this game too, because they want to play Legolas,
which is great. I mean,
whatever. Yeah,
I fucking love Orlando Bloom.
And the nice thing about the way D&D is set up, and I know some people are like, it pigeonholes you. I can't play a fucking giant tinker or whatever. Like,
yeah, sure.
But like the way it was designed and set up is that it is supportive of all those tropes.
Right.
Right. So if you want to play the tiny wobbly gnome wizard or the half elf ranger or the whatever, like these are things that probably more of an elf ranger, but you know, these are things that you're probably going to get in a quick build.
Yeah, 100%.
And those are things that are automatically satisfying because they're like
so satisfying.
They're in the back of our consciousness as like characters that make sense to us.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We are going to go with the standard character creation method because both of us are very familiar with creating characters and we know what to look for. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And D&D Beyond like sort of auto generates like this whole setup. You get pick the race and the class and the abilities. So I usually I don't come up with a name right away. I mean, a lot of people when they first start off, they're like, well, how do I name something? And then I always encourage if I have a first time player or whatever, you play the game whatever you want. Whatever way you want, as long as people at the table are fine with it and your DM is fine with it, whatever.
I got an idea. We're just going to say definitively, you can play this game however you want.
Yeah.
And from now on, it's going to be all hot takes, lines in the sands. Like,
perfect.
But if not, you're definitely wrong. If you
yeah. But if you don't do this, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
perfect.
Okay.
So
disclaimer out there.
Disclaimer is out. Yep. Anyways, don't do a shitty name, dude. I'm sorry. Like, come up with something. Don't do it. Oh, this is a funny joke. Like, oh my god. Like, I cannot tell you how peeved I get when people are like, I'm playing a
Campbell noodle soup.
Yeah, I know, or whatever.
Like,
yeah, Big Dick Johnson or whatever. And I'm like, dude, literally go fuck yourself.
Well, and the real advice there, for real though,
no, seriously,
is even for the players that create those characters, that joke is gonna, well, for sure, for everybody else, that joke's gonna get tired in
oh my god,
2 seconds.
It's not even gonna take the rest of the session.
Yeah, but even for the player that makes it, that thinks it's funny, you don't want to play that character more than an hour.
No, you don't.
2 weeks into this character, as you're starting to like really love them, and you're like want them to achieve their hopes and dreams, and your name is still Big Dick
Noodle Johnson. Yeah, come on,
do better.
Do better. I think a great sort of supplement to that is like if you're coming up with a name and it's something that is out of or not sort of like an ordinary thing. Like I love single like simple noun names. Like when we did that one shot a while ago, and I played that the orc wizard, and his name was Lentil, and he was a vegan.
Yeah, that's fun.
It's fun. Like it's not overtly whatever. His name is just Lentil, and he likes carrots, and like you know what I mean. And like he had blunted tusks because he doesn't eat meat, and he just likes to chomp on carrots all day or whatever. And it's like it's fun when you first introduce it, and then like for the rest of the game, it wasn't like people weren't like rolling their eyes at it. It was just like, oh, it's a cute, fun name or whatever.
Because
and
the joke was over at the introduction.
Exactly, and then like it wasn't invasive to the game after that, right? Like you could have a conversation with Lentil and it not be like, oh, do I really have to call you Big Dick? Like, is your name's really Big Dick? Like what? You know what I mean? Like, so that's the sort of like, you know, I don't know. That's what I would urge people to go to. But right now, we're not going to have to come up with a name. We might not even come up with a name for this person by the time we're finished with this. Who knows?
We'll see.
For sources, I'm going to include homebrew, and that's really it. There are other content that you can, like if you were playing a Magic the Gathering setting-based game, There's Magic the Gathering. There's Eberron.
Yeah. I mean, these things
Rick
really
and
just
Morty.
come down to which source books you've bought.
Yeah.
None of this is really key to. This is more D&D Beyond management than it is like character creation stuff.
And we're gonna not go with optional class features or customizing your origin. We're just gonna go with sort of classic stuff.
Yeah.
We're not gonna change too much. We're not gonna do custom races or anything. We're just gonna pick what's there. So, homebrew content, no name right now, no problem. We're gonna start. Well, actually, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you're building a character, do you start with the race or the class first?
Typically I start with the class. The main reason is because for me, usually, like, I intend on playing these characters for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? It might be different for one-shots, but for campaign type stuff, I intend on playing these characters for a long time. And so even though flavor is incredibly important to me, I do need to make sure that the mechanics are something that is going to be satisfying to me in the long term. The characterization is going to carry you through and is going to keep things satisfying, but I mean, fuck, you're going to spend a lot of time in combat.
Yep.
And if you're playing a class that just isn't fun for you, like if you're just like the type of person that's like, I find spells to be overwhelming, I don't want to have to worry about it, I just want to get in, I want to hit stuff with my weapon.
Yep.
Then, you know, you probably should just rule out half the classes.
100%.
You should, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
And so even if you have this this character in your mind, if you're just like, hey, I really want to play, like what's a class that works really well with well, I mean, let me think for something specific. Like let's say warlocks. Like this is classic, right? Like a tiefling warlock, right? So let's say you're like, hey, I really want.
No one ever plays that.
Yeah, no one ever plays that.
Incredibly
classic combination. It was my first character in our campaign together.
It's great.
Yeah. So let's say you're like, hey, I really want to play a tiefling. They're like they look dope.
Super sick.
You know, everyone wants to fuck a tiefling.
Everyone wants to fuck a tiefling.
So you know,
that's how you fuck your dungeon master. Yeah. That's literally. If you guys are looking to have sex with dungeon master consensually, you have to play a tiefling. Doesn't matter what they're into. Doesn't matter what you're into. That will get you laid.
Yep. It's
and that's the podcast. All right, let's go.
So, if that's like the vision that you have in your head, that might be like a way that you're sort of guiding your decisions based on the race. But then if you're also like, but I hate the system of spellcasting for warlocks, then that might be a case where like you can be a tiefling and not a warlock. You just be something else.
Yeah.
And so I just think that at least ruling out. Here's what I want to say. At least rule out the classes that you know you don't want to play.
100%.
And like going into this campaign, a bunch of us were having dinner before, like kind of right after the total party kill that we had, and I had sort of narrowed it down at that point to like 3 classes. And so at least narrow it down. And then if there's a race that you particularly want to play, then you can go back and be like, okay, which of those handful work best at this race?
Right. And then sort of in conjunction with that, if I always tell people, if you guys are like getting together, you and your group, and you're coming up with the party together, that's great. I always advocate, like, play what you want to play. Don't play what you think the party needs.
Yeah.
There's always an argument for, like, well, if we're all fucking spellcasters, then, well, in my opinion, honestly, well, then you're all fucking spellcasters, and then it's the DM's job to fucking cater the game to that.
Right.
Like, I don't know, like, you don't need to have the classic, you know, RPG, MMORPG, like, one of us has to be a tank, there's got to be a healer, 1 melee, 1 range, or something like that. Like, you don't need that. If your DM is not a dick, then, like, they will make the game, you know, according to what you're playing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but then also keep in mind, every once in a while, to keep the game interesting, in my opinion, as a DM, I'm going to throw something out there that is designed to challenge specific members of the party or the party as a whole. And then even then, I mean, if your players are clever, which this has happened a few times in the game, in the past campaign, where I'm like, oh, I'm designing this combat. It's going to be hard for them, specifically because I'm countering these abilities. Like I will literally go through your abilities and be like, you like to use this, they're immune to this or whatever, blah blah blah. Exactly, and then you just still wipe the floor with whatever the fuck you have, which is
something the DM can never account for everything that the players are going to.
You can't, but that's a big thing. Is like play what you want to play. Yeah. You know, I don't like the party composition to affect what you're playing.
I think the best way to do it is play what you want to play, and then tell your DM what you intend to play.
Yes.
And then the DM can step in if they feel it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because it's okay to have, you know, even like 2 sorcerers at the table.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or a sorcerer and a wizard at the table, and it's okay to have no healer. Trust me, it's okay to have.
It's totally okay to have no healer. You guys did that for about a year and a half.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And you don't want to play something just because it fills a party role, because you're gonna be stuck playing it for a long time.
True.
But I will say that, like, if both of you are the classic cat burglar,
yep.
If there's 2 players that are the classic cat burglar, and you're like, I'm really excited about stealthing in at night all alone, you know, climbing through the window, and then the 2 of you are looking at each other like, okay, whose turn is it?
Right.
Right. That's not gonna be satisfying either. So,
right.
But I think the best way is to just have the DM be like, hey, like, you both decided to be tabaxi rogue thieves.
Right. Yeah.
Like maybe you should make an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even done that with you just on like character voices. Like, hey, by the way, I'm thinking of doing a, you know, like a Texan accent. Just tell me if. Because you don't want to all
let
be
me
doing,
know if
right.
if you're all doing Texan things, it's like okay, you know what I mean.
It's just going to be less fun if you're too much like the other people. But for sure. Play what you want to play.
Right.
You're going to be stuck with this character hopefully for a long time.
Hopefully for a while. You know? Hell yeah. So I think it's a great idea to jump in with the class first.
Yeah, let's do that.
So in total,
actually, how about we do this?
Well, what's up?
Are we going to go? Let's just kind of like set it up. Like,
sure.
So we could just. There's 2 ways to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could say, I really love bards.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick a bard, and then I'm going to build a character around the bard. Or we could say, I have this character concept. What's the best way to create a character mechanically that meets that concept?
Sure.
So before we pick a class, we should just decide which way we want
to
go.
I think...
Or if we have time, we could even do both. I don't know how long
we could. Well, I mean, the character creation in general, I figured might expand like to maybe this might cover like 3 of these episodes because I think that there's a lot to go into it.
Shit.
I know, isn't that great?
Cool.
Because this first episode is sort of like the introduction to character building, really.
So let's start with the class because I think that's the easiest and most common method.
Yes, I think I don't mind doing it this way, just to like get it out of the way of like, okay, like what do I want to play? I think just for the sake of brevity in general, I wouldn't mind like rolling for it.
Oh yeah, just
if you want to do
pick
that,
a random class.
Yeah, and we'll just pick a random class, and then we'll start from there.
Let's do it this way, and then you know, hopefully our viewers, that's you, can maybe throw some suggestions in the Discord for future episodes.
That'd be super tight.
And if they're like, hey, how would you build like a fucking deep sea fisherman?
Yeah, sure.
Or like whatever.
Yeah. Like just a profession that is then like, I would love that.
Or like, how would you build an insane hermit? Or like, it could be any sort of description, but like, maybe we can take suggestions for what I'd call like a top-down design.
Yeah, 100%.
Flavor-based design.
We'll be linking the Discord in the chat right now. So future me, throw that in there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Hell yeah.
And then we would love to hear from you guys just about like what else you would want to see us be doing, specifically here, with the character creation and whatnot. Like I said, this first character, I want it to take like a little while for us to build. I really want to get into like once we set like the class and the stats and all that stuff, it's like, all right, well then now who is this person, right?
We're gonna do the whole gamut.
Oh yeah. So let's count this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, 13.
12 plus artificer.
12 plus artificer. Yes. Okay. So they not just.
So
but
go ahead and roll a d13.
Yeah. Well, let's do. How about this? Why don't we rule out one class that we just don't want to do, and then we'll roll a d12.
That's fair.
You know.
We'll both veto. Well, no, that won't work.
I think we should veto Druid because you're playing a Druid right now.
All right, that's fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Just to be like, okay, I don't want to have to redo that.
Yeah.
So sorry if anybody was interested in making a Druid, but we're gonna veto Druid because Matt is currently playing a Druid.
Go watch the pilot if you haven't already. I did talk a little bit about the choices I made in building Kill our local Druid in our current campaign, and yeah, dude, if you join the Discord at any point, you can throw up questions like, how did you do this with kill? What made you decide your whatever subclass or your skill proficiencies? Or I love the minutia of the game, so
Hell yeah.
ask me.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then, yeah, we'll just do 1 through 12. Skip.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll skip Druid, and that'll be fine.
Yeah,
so okay, so I got the D12. Oh, that I don't have a D12 anymore. I have another one right here. You got it. Yeah. Why don't you roll it, buddy? Yeah.
All right, here we go. Number 8.
Number 8. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Skip Druid. 5, 6, 7. Ranger.
Okay, I love this choice.
Ranger's great.
I love this choice.
Especially because if you don't know this, Ranger is universally considered to be the worst class in the game.
Yeah, I think I don't want to say universally, but I would say at the watering hole, at the water fountain.
Yeah.
I
The water
think
cooler.
there's definitely some folks in sort of like the optimization community, so to speak, who are like, y'all are dumb. Rangers are actually pretty good, but it's got a reputation.
It's got a reputation of being not good.
Rangers were real bad when they were first made.
Yep.
They've come a long way because Wizards of the Coast has done like official errata and optional class features and whatever, which has made them pretty fun. Another couple things just to kind of set the table. So the Ranger, they're in this weird spot between full spellcasters and what we'd call marshals.
Yes.
Meaning they do get spells. They get them sort of much slower in their progression, so they tend to cast fewer spells and we'll call them weaker spells, less powerful spells.
Right.
But they kind of have aspects of the martial classes that they get abilities that makes them better at attacking, and also they get some spell casting. So they're a really interesting class if you like to be a little bit more diverse in your options. And they're kind of like a rogue druid.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And the best thing about Ranger in general is that you really have like a really wide variety of ways you can take the class. I think that for the sake of this, maybe we'll lean I don't want us to lean too much toward like the classic Ranger. You know what I mean? I don't want to feel like we're pigeonholing ourselves into like, all right, well, we're doing this. But, I don't necessarily want to go too far away and be like, all right, we're going to do the Ranger completely different.
Yeah,
it's like,
we don't want to go too much against type for this first one. Yeah.
And I think we should, for the sake of this, start actually at level 3 instead of building a level 1 Ranger.
Okay.
Only for the sake of, I think starting at level 3 doesn't necessarily overwhelm a new player as long as they have someone, like walking them through the, what their class does. Or, if you're just really good at self, learning or whatever, like really like understand that there's really not that big of a, mechanical leap to make from level 1 to level 3. It's just at level 3 for most classes, Ranger specifically, you get an idea, you get your subclass, which is arguably the more important part of your character because it informs what your character does and sort of what they're interested in.
Yeah, I'm sure there's exceptions without going through it in my mind, but it's really hard to fully design a character without your subclass in mind. So when we talked earlier about like, do I pick race first or class first? The real answer is I pick my subclass first.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think starting at a slightly higher level, like 2 or 3, depending on your class, it avoids that kind of weird thing where a lot of subclasses are so transformative that playing without the subclass and then having to transition into the subclass can be very awkward.
Yeah.
If you are like, we've talked about like paladins in particular.
Paladins it's just a very weird class. Like, I don't understand how you can do so much from level 1 to 3, because classically, that's very quick. That happens very quickly. To go from level 1 to 3 generally really shouldn't take you more than like 5 sessions, really.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can do so much in that time to where you're like, okay, now my character knows what oath they're going to take.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't know. As a paladin, it just seems like you should just start with what oath you are, and that happens to be mechanically at level 3.
Yeah, the levels before you get your subclass almost feel like the prequel to your story.
Great way to learn to play the game, but that all can be done with a session 0.
Yeah.
Which we can talk about later on in future episodes of like what session 0s looked like, at least for us and whatnot. But I think starting with level 3 is a good call.
Totally
so,
fair.
Speaking of subclasses, I think in the Ranger it is their archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. There's a handful of options. So in total there are 7. There is the Beastmaster Ranger.
This is across all the books.
This is across of the source books that I have access to.
Which I think is probably all.
Which
of
is
them,
all of them.
Up until I know Fizban's Treasury of Dragons is
coming out,
and you don't have that one yet.
I don't. And then the new
Strixhaven.
Strixhaven, yeah. But I don't believe they have a rogue or a ranger.
Probably not.
Probably not. But as far as I know, the classic ranger in the player's handbook has 2 subclasses. It is the Beastmaster and the Hunter.
Yeah.
And then in addition to all of those from Xanathar's Guide and other different things, there's 5 additional ones.
Yep.
So the Beastmaster, like I said before, the first one is your typical like I'm a ranger and I want a animal companion.
Mm-hmm.
Again, classically known as perhaps the mechanically worst subclass in the game period.
Yes.
It's just not good.
It's just a bad design.
It's a bad design, and that's not
to.
on it.
Right.
If you have an extraordinarily good dungeon master, specifically at like game design, and you really want that, 100% talk to them. I'm sure they can figure something out. I'm pretty sure there are just a myriad of like homebrew versions of the Beastmaster that are just straight up mechanically better.
Yeah. Well, there was the Unearthed Arcana Revised Ranger that never became official.
Right.
But now with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, there is the sort of the official update. I mean, it's called an option. Right. But it just is the new Beastmaster Ranger.
There you go.
And effectively, it just takes the mechanical limitations that don't change the concept at all.
No.
They don't change the flavor of what you're doing at all. It just makes you more functional, more effective in combat. And there's really no reason, I would say, for a DM to not allow it, and there's no reason for a player to not select it. If you're simply just like, well, I bought the player's handbook and I don't own Tasha's, this is one where I would just say, just Google it.
Yeah.
Because the changes aren't extreme enough that you would get confused.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like, yeah, these are the two classic examples. Probably the most famous character in the actual like lore of Dungeons and Dragons is Drizzt Do'Urden, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the Drow Ranger
with his
Jaguar companion.
Yeah,
or
but
Panther companion or whatever.
It's a Panther companion, but isn't it specifically a
oh yeah.
It's a classic monster in D&D. The Panther with the tentacles. Oh my god, I can't. It'll come with Beast. Displacer Beast. Yes.
And he also has the twin
blades,
scimitars or whatever, which hilariously the player's handbook Beastmaster Ranger really can't effectively dual wield and have a beast,
right? Which
is part of the problem. People wanted to be Drizzt Do'Urden, and then they realized that they couldn't. Right. The good news is you can basically do that now with the new Ranger,
which is great.
And then the other version is the Hunter, which is really just I mean, it's self-explanatory.
It's Legolas, man.
Yeah,
you shoot people with bows and arrows, and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
and you deal shitloads of damage, and you do it from far away. It's consistent. It's one of the better subclasses in the game because you just get a lot of really great bonuses. You can stay out of the fray for the most part, and you just snipe people from ways away, which is super fun. And a lot of people would probably, naturally want to avoid that because it doesn't seem interesting. It doesn't seem like, okay, well, there's not really a lot going on. It's the same reason why people don't like to play fighter or whatever, because it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to go in and hit something and twice and leave. That's why we want to build this sort of character and show that no matter what you're picking, if you take the extra time to really like build a fleshed out person, the mechanics of what you're working with are simply just going to serve that, and vice versa.
Do we want to because we kind of want to stick to some classic tropes with this first one? Do we want to stick with these two as options, or do we want to go into the other choices as well?
We can totally stick with these two as our options. I do want to mention some of the other ones. I'm actually not familiar with, right under Beastmaster is Fey Wanderer.
Oh, I know them all.
I'm sure you do, which I'm so glad that you're here as the co-host, Matt. This is a great. The one that I'm most actually familiar with when it comes to the other subclasses is Horizon Walker, because it is the subclass, to me, that if I were to ever build a ranger, I would want to play Horizon Walker because it's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Now, I will say something about it is that building a Horizon Walker at a low level doesn't seem actually that synergistic to me, because the concept of this subclass is so like
Go ahead and say what the
the Horizon Walker basically the Horizon Walker Ranger is an idea of a ranger that travels realms, like trying to discover new interesting things or hunt down different or whatever. Like it's basically a realm walker,
and also is the protector of their realm,
and also is a protector of their realm.
So they're like out there looking for portals,
yes,
and looking for and so like this is an example of a ranger that is almost completely against the classic tropes.
100%.
Right. This has to do with, like, you could play this in like a Lovecraftian game with, you know, these eldritch horrors trying to claw their way into your world. You could play this in sort of like a more sci-fi game with sort of more traditional aliens trying to find their way. You could play this in maybe like a multiverse type game where you're, you know, almost like a Marvel thing where you're looking to, you know, save one multiverse from another, whatever. Like if I wanted to play a character, and this is why subclasses are so much more evocative.
Oh, so
like, if you're
much
just
more.
like, oh, I have a concept. Like, let me just throw a concept at you.
Go
for
for
a
it.
second.
Hit me.
So, you know, this is not me being a genius. This is something that exists in movies and and books and stuff. But like, okay, so my world has fallen. Right. There's been an apocalypse. This could be a Matrix situation where the machines have won. This could be a classic like Independence Day situation where the aliens have destroyed your planet, whatever.
Trunks and Dragon Ball Z.
Trunks and Dragon Ball Z. This could be a fucking just like an ice age.
Sure.
You know, but somehow you are one of the few survivors left, and your sort of goal is to find a way. You know, either because it's fact in your world or just because you've discovered something, you've found an ancient tablet or God knows what, but your thing is trying to get to the other parallel universes in the multiverse to warn them of the coming, you know, scourge, right? Now, if I just said that to you, you wouldn't be like, yeah, Ranger, they like pick mushrooms.
I know.
And
yeah,
they, like,
Rangers really, really evoke that idea. Yeah.
But like then you see this subclass and it immediately brings all these like ideas in your head. So, you know, this is why we say that like the subclass is really where like the meat is at.
Yes.
But yeah, like I agree with you. Like if you're not only low level seems a little strange, but also I would say that this is one that don't just show up at your table and surprise your DM that you're playing a Horizon Walker.
Yeah, 100%.
Because this is one that is super like campaign specific. Like,
yes.
The DM has to want to have aliens or invading some things or whatever.
Because it's a lot of work for the DM to now be like, okay, well, shit, like you come from an entirely separate realm. It's not necessarily good to not cover that in like when you're like creating your notes or creating your world as a DM. So now, if it's not intrinsic to the game, it's like, okay, well, what if it ever comes up or whatever? And if it never comes up, then what's the point of playing?
If there's no portals in your world and your abilities are finding portals,
Right.
it's gonna suck for you. And by the way, this is one too where like, if you're a Horizon Walker and the rest of your party is like the cat burglar,
Yep.
you know, somebody's playing like a hunter and somebody's playing like a, you know, like a fucking priest of of whatever, and everyone else is doing high fantasy and you're doing this like plane jumping
sci-fi crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then that's another instance when the DM might say, look, I'd either recommend you don't play the Horizon Walker or let me find ways to make this interesting for you, but also interesting for everybody else.
Right.
This is another subclass where like it makes me want to do a whole campaign of this kind of nonsense.
Yes.
Right. Where there's a lot of these newer subclasses, there are sort of equivalents in some of the other classes. nothing's coming to mind immediately, but like you could say where like I'm playing the Horizon Walker Ranger, maybe you're gonna play the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer,
Right.
where there's some like alien, Lovecraftian
Yeah.
parasite that's invaded your brain, and now you have psionic powers.
Mhm.
Like this is why aside from the rule of thumb being you can play the game any way you want.
Right.
Really the key message is in character creation, be in sync with your DM.
Yes.
They're going to make sure that their actual job is to make sure that they have fun, but that you have fun.
Right. 100%. And
yeah.
slightly tangentially with that, I do want to say we just spoke on like the intricacies of this subclass and like why you should or shouldn't play it based on what you're doing. In addition to that, I would say as a general rule of thumb, a huge problem with making low level characters and then like going in and creating a backstory for them, don't do too much.
Yeah.
Like when you come to the table with a character, let the game be your feats of strength and glory, and like that's the right. Like if you're coming to the table and you're starting off with a level 15 character, obviously what we're talking about is probably not for you because you probably have done this before.
Or will be, but we'll get there.
Right, exactly. And then you can be like, okay, well, I've slayed this dragon from this land and these people, whatever, blah, 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 which is another reason why I don't really understand why. We'll get into background, but I don't understand why the fucking folk hero is a background choice that you can pick for a low-level thing.
Let's be honest, the backgrounds are they're super weak.
Yeah, backgrounds
not
are super
mechanically,
weak in
but
general.
like they're just not
in general
well designed.
Yeah, no.
It's just a way to give you extra skills.
Yeah, which is whatever.
Yeah. And nobody ever uses the background abilities.
No, not once.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's always this weird like, well, my background says that I can never get lost, and I blah 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 blah, and I'm like, why the fuck would you never be able to do that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Anyways, digress.
I'm sure in another episode we'll get into maybe things we'd like to see in future editions of D&D, or things in this thing that we maybe are a little less than pleased. Maybe some redesign stuff would be fun, but
yeah, certainly. But just don't, as a rule of thumb, if you're first starting out, or maybe it's your second or third year, if you're making a character and it's not, and it's legitimately if it's under level 10, like do not come up with more than like maybe one or two incidents that led to you to adventure in the game. Let the game be your, your stories. Like create, like you said.
You ripped that off the tip of my tongue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let the game be the story that you're writing.
It's okay to come to your DM in your level 1 and say, I would like this character to be the savior of his kingdom.
That's
okay
great.
To say.
That is a great goal.
And then the DM knows that, okay, that might be appropriate for like let's say level 12 or something. And I'm going to put milestones between here and then.
Yeah, we'll get you there.
I'm not going to force your way there, but I'm going to give you room to take steps to get there.
Yep.
Maybe around level 7 there's going to be, I don't know, some kind of like invasion, murmurs of an invasion or something, right? But if you come to your DM and you're like, I want my character to be right, like he saved his kingdom at level 1, then your DM is going to, if he says, sure, I want you to be happy, then what is your character going to do now? You're already the savior of your kingdom.
Yeah, it's like what else is there to do?
Your story is going to be super unsatisfying.
Right.
And B, it just doesn't make sense mechanically to be able to, whatever. I mean, and I'm saying this, I even made this mistake recently, semi-recently, when I came to you with the idea for this last campaign, which I didn't end up using. I was basically like, hey, I want my character to be like the leader of this, like, basically of their druid circle.
Right.
And you're like, dude, that makes no fucking sense for like a level 3 character to be the leader.
Yeah,
of
it just doesn't like.
And in the way, and that was more on me not really understanding what a druid circle is, to be honest.
Which is fine.
Than to have these like illusions of grandeur, but yeah, like you want to play your story at the table.
Yes. Yeah. Play your story at the table. That's the biggest thing.
Let's do a quick recap because I feel like we're obviously just going off the dome here.
So off the dome.
So I want to make sure that we're like checking in and making sure we're doing it.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah. So far, we're saying, play what you want to play.
Yep.
Talk to your DM throughout your decision-making process.
Yep.
If you come up with a mechanical concept that you like, then we're going to help you find ways to drive that into the flavor.
Absolutely.
But for sure, I think those are the key elements so far.
Yes, 100%. And then lastly, don't do too much.
Don't do too much.
Yeah, don't just come up with a couple great concepts and let those speak for themselves as you play the game.
Yep.
Uh, what I would personally actually like to do in building this, specifically with the subclass for the Ranger, I would like to explore the Monster Slayer for two reasons.
Okay.
Number one, I think it's just it gives us a little bit more to work with than Hunter does. And it still carries that sort of classic flavor of Ranger, but with a little bit more built-in purpose to it.
Okay.
Right? So I'm not too, and I also am not like super familiar with the Monster Slayer in general.
I was gonna say it might be interesting because that's one that I really actually don't know.
Exactly. We can be discovering this along with, like, if someone was interested in building this character, like we're going to be discovering this as well. You know what I mean? And if you're new, no matter what you're picking, you're discovering what the fuck it is, no matter what, even if it's the Beastmaster. And we were just like, oh, it's you get a bow and arrow or swords or whatever you want, and you also get an animal companion.
Yeah,
and then it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And then you go discover it. So
let's
Monster Slayer, we're going to go ahead with that. Now, D&D Beyond sort of automatically gives us like what we get at level 3 for that, but we're not going to jump into that yet. I actually, for the last bit, because we're probably going to wrap this up pretty soon, since we got our class set up and our subclass, which is pretty much the most important thing. Next episode, we'll jump into sort of mechanically and like stat wise what we want to do, how quote unquote optimally do we want to play this, do we whatever. If people really like min-maxing or whatever, we can give you options for that. It's like, all right, so like if you really want to do this and you just want to be the fucking stat monster and you want to hit hard and like that's what you care about, that's fine. Here are some options that you can go with to advocate for that. If you want to build something that's maybe slightly more nuanced in the realm of role playing or whatever, or you just have a really cool idea like, oh well, I want to be a gnome that is a monster hunter ranger or whatever. It's like, all right, cool.
Sure.
Mechanically, probably not the most synergistic thing, but fuck it, who gives a shit? Like, let's make it happen. I would like to jump in with that. We can roll stats in the next episode. We can figure out the race and whatnot. But to end this episode, I want to just sort of read off the Monster Slayer, so that we both have a good idea of like what we're sort of bringing to the table. Yeah,
let's get the description, and maybe we can just toss out a few things that like come to mind immediately.
Hell yeah! So we're gonna go game rules. We're gonna go over to Ranger.
Yeah, one thing as he's pulling it up, I'd like to say is even if you are gonna do this via Google, right? Read the little bits of lore both for the race that you end up picking and the class and subclass that you end up picking. Because it's easy to skim over it because there's no mechanics there.
Right.
But for all the things that I think maybe Wizards hasn't done so well, those little bits of lore are good.
They're really good.
They're well written. They inform the character incredibly well. And like there might be aspects of the abilities that you're certainly going to notice because they give you mechanical things to do that maybe just like you won't really even know what, like, why can I do this? This doesn't really make sense to me if you don't maybe take a minute to check it out. So, so for sure, the way that you and I build characters is to get a little sense of what the lore is going to be, and then work from there. So, let's get into it.
For sure. So, the Ranger in general, there's a whole lot of, like, to reiterate what you're saying, definitely read, like, whatever class you pick, read the general sort of, like, lore about this class that is found, like, you can find it anywhere, right? Like, predominantly it's in the player's handbook. You can just look it up. It's pretty much, you can access that anywhere. They always lead with like a cute, like, sort of narrative thing at the beginning, which is very nice.
Usually they give you sort of 3 or 4 examples, kind of like, you know, which is cool. It helps.
Super cool. Direct quotes from different like stories and whatnot, which is super tight. So the Ranger in general, warriors of the wilderness, Rangers specialize in hunting the monsters that threaten the edges of civilization. Humanoid raiders, rampaging beasts and monstrosities, terrible giants, and deadly dragons, among other things. They learn to track their quarry as a predator does, moving stealthily through the wilds and hiding themselves in brush and rubble. Rangers focus their combat training on techniques that are particularly useful against their specific favored foes. So exactly like you said, it's basically sort of like the love child of Rogue and Druid.
Yeah.
Which is
so
super
like
cool.
If you're just like, oh cool, I have this ability called Favored Foe, like it gives me like, I forget what it does. It gives me like advantage when trying to track certain character types or whatever. Yeah. That one's fairly self-explanatory, but like it's nice to have that little connection.
Yeah.
I will say that the base Ranger's flavor even has changed, I would say.
Oh, certainly.
Not that this is no longer available, but you can now play a ranger that isn't so tightly tied to having this sort of like creature that you're hunting all the
Right.
time, which is nice and does support some of the later subclasses much
Yes.
better.
Which is great because Monster Slayer, which I will
Yeah.
read, is one of the things that expands upon that. It's we don't have necessarily a specific type of creature that we go after. The Monster Slayer is, as its name suggests, slays monsters. So the Monster Slayer, quote, you have dedicated yourself to hunting down creatures of the night and wielders of grim magic. A Monster Slayer seeks out vampires, dragons, evil fae, fiends, and other magical threats. Trained in supernatural techniques to overcome such monsters, slayers are experts at unearthing and defeating mighty mystical foes.
Okay.
So even just that, I think that that was 3 sentences.
Yeah.
That can already sort of get us thinking about, okay, why do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I interested in slaying these evil foes? Is it simply because I am just such a good person that like I believe it is my destiny to be doing this? Could be, whatever. Could be a little bit more nuanced to that, which we'll explore in later episodes. But that informs, even those 3 sentences. Now I can be like, all right, I know what I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
I have a jumping off point. At level 3, the base things for a Monster Slayer you get is Hunter's Sense, which we'll go into this kind of stuff a little bit more. Slayer's Prey, and all these things. And then you get additional spells for your list, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm expecting when I take this class that I'm playing a character that cares one way or another about slaying monsters. It could be out of some sense of duty.
Yep.
It could be out of the thrill of it.
Mm-hmm.
It could be because I'm the last heir of this dragon killing lineage or whatever.
Yep.
Tons of ways I can do it. But I'm going to take this character because I want to be doing those things, and I'm expecting that my abilities that I get are going to enable me to do those things. And because I've, talked to my DM, and I'm like, hey, I want you to make some dope ass shit for me.
Fuck
yeah.
Hell yeah. And as a DM, if a player came to me with the concept of this character, specifically as a DM that loves to homebrew monsters and items and different things like that, this would immediately, I would be like, oh yes, I would love to do that. We can really come up with some super interesting creatures that you might encounter and stuff like that are just out of the norm for certain things. So this type of character serves both the player, the dungeon master, and the group in general, which in my opinion is the best type of character.
Yeah.
When you create a character that enhances the experience of the table and not just what you like to do, which is fine, but when you can enhance the experience at the table, it just makes everything better, as that sentence would suggest.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I think for the most part, that's going to do it for the sort of introduction to character building, which I think is what we'll title this episode. And then in some sequent episodes, we're going to, no matter how long it takes, we're going to try to create an interesting character out of the Monster Slayer Ranger.
Hell yeah.
So, hell yeah, guys. I hope you all enjoyed sort of listening to the process of how Matt and I sort of come up with these characters. And as we're building this, I suggest, just as Matt said, we're going to link it again now. Future me, please. Join us in the Discord, ask us some questions about, like, if you're creating a character and you're just sort of stumped on, like, what to do or something like that, and you have a group, and, you just sort of like, I don't know, what really to do. I have this idea. Ask us about it in the Discord. We would love to chat with you and everything like that. I'm more than willing to, like, offer you examples of what I've done. Matt, obviously not to speak for you, but is also we love character building. It's just super fun in general. Sure. So definitely reach out. You can check the Discord link in the chat right now. Yeah, I think that was a pretty good way to sort of jump into what we do for building character.
We'll get into this is a little bit more high level, a little bit more like kind of general advice, and then next time we'll get into kind of the nitty gritty of
absolutely diving
in.
Fuck yeah,
cool.
All right, well, thanks for joining, everybody, and we'll catch you next week. These are predominantly going to be coming out on Thursdays, so the day following our usual campaign, which again you can catch Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. on this Twitch channel. If you're watching it here on Twitch, and if you're just listening to it, the Twitch channel is A Little Dicey DND. So thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next week.
See you guys.
Peace. Hell yeah, brother.
Hell yeah.
Good shit.